For centuries, the spoken words of Chickasaws carried their stories from one generation to the next. Their histories were oral histories, held within Chickasaw families like a precious treasure. And under those spoken Chickasaw words was the cultural glue that bound families to other Chickasaw families as a tribal people. Language is still one of the cultural unifiers. It is the foundation of a connection to the past, to ancestors, to each other. But today that foundation is threatened like never before.
Chickasaw, I mean, it gives you a sense of place. It gives you a sense of belonging. It makes you feel something strange and intangible, and you can't quite quantify it in words, you know? But it's meaningful. It lives its best when it's in the air. Chickasaw is a Muskogean language. All the Muskogean languages, and in Chickasaw in particular, are highly endangered. In contrast to Creek, for example, that has maybe 6,000 speakers, we have 50 native speakers of the language.
It's not just Chickasaw, it's almost every American Indian language. But it certainly is a matter of concern because everybody in the world loses when we lose languages because they are such precious carriers of culture. It's just really, really important.
Our language is what sets us apart from all other nationalities, and so once we lose our language, then a part of our identity is gone.
Looking back, the signs were there. The slow eroding away of the Chickasaw language, like other native languages, was inevitable during the course of a history with an intent to stamp out native culture entirely. Whether it was sending young Chickasaws to boarding schools, or federal assimilation policies to break up tribal land and communities, or the influx of settlers that outnumbered tribal citizens, the chipping away at the language was relentless in the 20th century.
By statehood, by 1907, there was, 6,000 tribal citizens in Chickasaw Nation and over 100,000 non-Indians. The people that had most of the economic power in 1907 were speakers of English.
And the spoken and unspoken message of the 20th century was that in order to compete in a changing world, young Chickasaws needed to speak English. The message was strongest within the federally run boarding schools.
And I know the teacher one time, she said, "Don't be talking Chickasaw."
I knew quite a bit before I went up there, but they wouldn't let us talk it. Losing what I had was tragic for me.
They actually spanked the little ones if they were not speaking English.
Made me angry, made me confused about why can I talk it.
They'd get on to you.
Our ancestors saw that, you know. Our great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, they saw what it was going to take to be successful in a modern world, and so they started to make choices, really out of love for their kids, but make choices to not pass on the language.
My great and grandpa was taught Chickasaw all the time, and you know, when we went to school, we didn't hardly hear our language. It makes me sad because the kids didn't learn it in the home.
Our families discouraged kids from speaking Chickasaw because they didn't want them to suffer. Because they did suffer, you know, prejudice and abuse and all the other things that come from being marginalized people in your own territory. They didn't want us to have to suffer. So they made those choices out of love, not because they didn't care about Chickasaw or they didn't care about the language. The language just didn't seem to be endangered, you know, because everywhere you turned, there was someone who could speak Chickasaw.
The first alarms about the language slipping away probably first sounded in the 1970s. As a result, the Reverend Jesse Humes and Vinnie Mae James Humes compiled the first Chickasaw dictionary.
Mr. and Mrs. Humes themselves said, we see this shift. The authors of the first dictionary said, we're seeing this shift where these kids don't know their language.
The Humes Dictionary was a rallying point in addressing the importance in knowing, retaining, and speaking Chickasaw. Following the compilation of the first Chickasaw dictionary, other Chickasaws began working to save the language. In 1977, UCLA linguist Pamela Monroe and Chickasaw elder Catherine Wilmond forged a lifelong friendship and became partners to aid in the preservation of the Chickasaw language.
Chickasaw is a truly wonderful language. Before I started working on it, there was very, very little written about the language. There was the dictionary made by Governor James's mother, and we can number.
So picking up where Jesse and Vinnie Mae Humes had left off, they developed a new version of the Chickasaw Dictionary, the Chickasaw Analytical Dictionary, followed by recordings of 40 speakers and a new book, Let's Speak Chickasaw, which included lessons in grammar and pronunciation. Mrs. Wilmond said she was raised to believe the loss of her God-given language signaled the end of everything.
Them days, those Indians never speak English language. So that's why I never speak English for a long time. Chickasaw lost the language when Judgment Day come. This is what they used to say. That's why they didn't want to lose the language. If Chickasaw language is gone, everything be gone. So this is why they didn't want to lose the language, but it's about gone now.
You can have a two-syllable word. I've studied many, many different American Indian languages, but Chickasaw is the world's best language.
Well, she can speak Chickasaw language now, so I guess she can speak to me now. Yes, she can speak. She had to learn first before we can start it. That's why it takes so long to make a dictionary.
Today's native Chickasaw speakers are few in numbers. They are the ones who had a strong connection to the language within their family and didn't let go. And today, many of them are devoting time, energy, and enthusiasm to keeping the language alive. They hope to inspire a new generation of Chickasaws who will carry the flame forward.
I just want our language to keep going. Little did I know that this is what I was going to be doing, teaching others our language. When I speak about this, it makes me get emotional because I was given an opportunity to do this. So I just want to give it all I've got to teach others. I just feel so blessed that at least I still remembered the language. I thank God every day that I have remembered my language.
It saddens me that we have just few fluent speakers. God gave us that language to pass on to the rest of our tribal members, and I try to share it with whoever wants to learn.
I would go to school and speak English, and then when I came home, I would speak Chickasaw because my mother didn't speak any English. All she spoke was Chickasaw.
I just can't imagine Chickasaw language not being part of our culture, and we are striving to keep the language alive.
With me, see, I grew up with this first language I heard when I was born.
I knew most of it because my mother never spoke in English. She always spoke in Chickasaw. You know, they would sit around and speak Chickasaw, and that's all they would speak. And my uncle used to tell me stories in Chickasaw, and they would just laugh, you know.
Growing up, Grandpa told me, he said, don't ever be ashamed of your language. You speak it. That God gave us that language. Use it.
I'll be 72, and it's that age, about my age, or a little older, are the only ones that are able to talk Chickasaw, and there's not very many of us.
Oh, I just can't imagine not having the Chickasaw language.
Statistic shows right now, every 13 days, some Indian people are losing our language. Now think about that, every 13 days.
We looked around and realized that we were losing speakers quite regularly, almost one per month on average since 2007. We could see that there was something, slipping away. And that's something that I've tried to impress on the staff, is that we just don't have a whole lot of time. And there's a day coming when we're it.
Well, Governor Anatebi sees the need to save our language. He knows that our precious fluent speakers, who are near and dear to our hearts, are up in age and we continue to lose them. And language, he knows, is a very important part of our identity.
With all the support of a nation, the foundation of language preservation continues to be the elders, speakers who against all odds held their language close and kept it safe through decades of challenge.
We're at a very critical point where we have to try to develop things such as Rosetta Stone, online programs, workbooks, that we can get their input while they're still with us. That way we can continue to learn the language, share the language, and hopefully create second language learners.
Chickasaws everywhere worldwide can see what they've done and hear what they've done.
Elder Jerry Imitachi was a slow convert to the idea of teaching the language. He had long held the belief that language should be passed on within a family, and only within a family. But as he watched the number of Chickasaw speakers dwindling, he changed his mind and became a mentor in the language revitalization program.
I can look back and remember how it was, was in my younger days, That's all we spoke, Chickasaw. What I want to see is a group of Chickasaw have taken advantage to the point where they're able to teach, and then it'll be passed on from generation to generation,
And the teachings of Chickasaw elders have made a tremendous difference.
We try to keep it alive, the rest of us that are remaining, so that's good.
Under the support and advocacy of Governor Anatebi, a group of second language learners has emerged with passion and dedication and that core quality of so many Chickasaws, determination.
I've been involved in Master Apprentice, and I'm doing group immersion now, and getting to talk to other speakers. Really developed a passion to try to learn and try to teach and try to speak.
The language is who we are. This is a part of us. This is what makes us different from other tribes. And if we don't have that, then we're just like everybody else.
Stan, he mentioned growing up as a kid, coming to town, that the Chickasaw men, Choctaws I guess too, would gather under a shade tree in Ada, speak Chickasaw, laughing. He shared that story 2-3 months ago, and he said, those days are gone. Himona, wait. I said, they're not gone. I said, there may not be 20 Chickasaw men under that shade tree, but there's gonna be 3 or 4 of us speaking.
What we're doing now is encouraging our tribal citizens to just learn whatever's useful to them. There are a handful of us, though, who've given our lives to it, and we will become as proficient as possible. We want to give Chickasaw a life far, far into the future.
Oh, it's such a lovely language. It would be terrible if there were no speakers. So I think that if we can get more young people like Josh, who has learned this language completely from scratch and is now really a good speaker, if we can get more people like that, that'll be wonderful.
It'll never cease to be spoken. It's up to us as Chickasaws to decide how we want our language to live in the future.
I
know it saddens me that we have just few fluent speakers, but the second generation speakers are starting to learn it.
I'm happy to see the Chickasaw language coming back and people being proud.
You know, I don't feel enough of our people really stop to think about what we lose when we lose a speaker.
What's in my heart, I know that I'm a Chickasaw and I have pride in my tribe, always been prideful of it, and still am today. I think that the one most important thing that I think about is that if they would enhance this language and begin to speak the language, there'd be more pride of being an Indian. That's what I'd like to see in the future.
In the fall of 2016, Jerry went to be with his ancestors, where Chickasaw is always spoken, and the Chickasaw spirit envelops its people with a humble pride forever.
And Jerry Imitachi was always on the front lines.
He did believe in what it was we were trying to accomplish. He believed that we really could get better and better every day in Chickasaw.
It's really hard to overcome. He was just a great man, a great teacher.
The loss of Jerry Imitachi was a reminder that the guiding voices of our elders will not remain with us forever. Second language learner Jason Burwell says the fire inside him burns even brighter today.
I have an obligation to it. There should be a hunger within you to know our language. And I'll never arrive at where I want to be, but this is just a lifelong journey.
So it was just kind of like, we don't have time to waste anymore. Now's the time to learn, now's the time to do it.
We are the sum product of our ancestors, all of the efforts, all of their trials and their joys and their happinesses and their sufferings, like it all comes to a point in us. And no matter what you're doing for your people, it's your obligation to them and your ancestors to do it well. We have to do right by them. We don't have a whole lot of time. Yeah, not a whole lot of time. When I was appointed to direct the language program in 2007, there was like 120-something speakers. And now there's like less than 50, so you feel every one of those, every one that you regret not spending more time with them. You regret not getting more conversations. You regret not having more of their stories.
Chickasaw. Chukma.
Chickasaw.
Chukma. Chukma. Chukma.
But it certainly does make what can be challenging work a lot easier, knowing that all your people are standing right behind you. The thing that will keep us strong as Chickasaws is the culture. And at the core of the culture is the language. All of us involved in language feel this sort of moral obligation to share what we know with other people.
And for a moment, the past revisits the present with a special service at Seeley Chapel. and Chickasaw voices rise to the heavens as one.
Church time, they just got up and start singing, and everybody just knew the songs. Oh, it makes you feel good. You think about people that's gone, it's been gone a long time, but you can hear their voice singing, and it's just like yesterday.
And it's true. The language lives best when it's in the air. And the next generation of speakers say they are on a mission to breathe new life into Chickasaw.
We are Chickasaw, and we are still here.